motto.
Yeah.
So you guys seem to be very happy together.
We really are.
Did you have this relationship through the whole movie, or was it an instant friendship when you met?
I think we got along very well right off the bat.
You feel comfortable enough to say that?
Yeah, and felt comfortable then. The relationship in the movie becomes, very intense, and so at certain times we kept our distance from each other on set, which is normal in a movie like this. But Andrew drives like a little scooter because he's English, and so when we were going long distances, I would drive him in the morning, and he had to be cordial to me then because I'm a terrible driver.
He really is. He drives in the parking lane and honks at old people a lot. You have no patience for old people in cars.
Old and young. It seems like everybody in LA just like stops at the light and then just starts like text messaging, and then the light turns green, and they're just still doing that.
Yeah, because they're waiting for jobs. They keep on doing the
refresh button at the end of the movie.
Exactly,
it's either that or they're stoned, but everybody in LA just seems to like stop on the street
It's
in
not
front
a
of
good
me.
thing. In front of you particularly.
Exclusively.
They're waiting for you.
Yeah.
So did you? I assume your version of getting your trip into this movie was a little different than Andrew's, or was it? Was this something? Because you seemed to be a much tougher candidate to get this role.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, luckily I didn't have to consider that. Luckily, my agent was worrying about that, and I could just guilelessly walk into a room with Aaron Sorkin and David Fincher and try and be okay at acting, and but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I feel like there was some fortuitous connections previous to the inception of the film, which was Scott Rudin. And Scott Rudin is someone that I met in London about 5 years ago. He came and saw me when I was in a play there, and he of all people to be a supporter of a young actor, I think he's. He's incredibly passionate. He started as a casting director, and of course now one of our greatest, well, maybe arguably our greatest producer. And so to have him in your corner is incredibly lucky, and I'm incredibly indebted to him for that. So I think he told David Fincher that I was in LA and that I was worth meeting for some odd reason, and I did. And me and David, I just listened to David talk for about 45 minutes. He just had so many stories, and he was so kind of like open with them, and so kind of warm. And I didn't expect it. You don't expect it from his films. But I guess then I read for Mark, for Jesse's character. What I thought I was doing was reading for Jesse's character, Mark. Maybe under the guise of always being considered for Eduardo, I'm not sure. Either way, it was a really incredible experience to, Actually, I realized the other day how much it helped when I finally was able to play the role that I was eventually going to play. Because I think a big part of Eduardo is he has to understand Mark in a deeper way than anyone else does, and I think that is important for him in terms of. To truly love someone like a brother and like a best friend, you have to understand where all of that terrible behavior comes from, and to have that be justified. So I spent 2 weeks working on these scenes and looking at the script as if I was Mark and trying to access his intentions and his needs, and I was kind of deep in it, I think, just because it was so much fun, and it turned out to be the most valuable exercise of, and it wasn't a waste of time. It was actually it was invaluable.
So they just bring Jesse in one day and say, "Oh, by the way, you're not playing Mark anymore."
No. I don't think I was ever going to play Mark. I think I read for Mark. I read those scenes, the Mark scenes, and then I read again with Aaron and David, and as far as I was concerned, that was what I was being considered for. But then David called me and said, "Hey, come into my office quickly." So I did, and I remember I was on my Vespa, I was on my scooter, my little English scooter, and the route. I remember the route. That route was like the most. I will never forget that route. It engenders incredible excitement in me, just because of the meeting that I ended up having at his office, and then the decision I had to make on the way back, which was the most simple decision ever. It was just a really beautiful kind of wind through my helmet moment. And he kind of just said, Eduardo. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, you know, what do you think? Think about it. Read the script and think about it. And I was like, well, I'd play Brenda Song's character in this, so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll have a think about this other role in your movie, Fincher, you, whatever, yeah, first-time director, and so yeah, no, that was kind of it was circuitous, but actually didn't take that long, you know. But you read once, right? Mm-hmm. You made a tape.
Yeah. I live in New York, so I made a videotape because they told me that they were only holding auditions for a very brief period of time, and so I mailed it out, and I thought it was really bad. I made it kind of hastily.
Did they ask you for it, or did you just decide you're going to go for it?
No, they asked me to make a tape of a few scenes, so I did, but very quickly, and I called my agent the next day and told her to... I flew to Seattle the next morning, and I called her when I got in, and I said, and I had FedExed it, and so I had called her to ask her if she can hold off from giving it to them until I get back to New York and make another tape, because I didn't think it was good. And she said she already got a call that I was supposed to fly out to California to meet with David Fincher, and that they had liked it. So I flew from Seattle to Los Angeles a few days later and had a meeting with him, and I had prepared to read the whole script with him, and I had memorized a lot of it, and spent my week in Seattle learning a lot of the script, assuming that I would go down to meet him and read for him, which is what I would have preferred to do than what happened, which was just like a kind of a long, like a 4-hour meeting where he told where we talked about the character, and he told me about the way he likes to shoot, as though I have some kind of point of reference for that. And I had preferred, of course, to just read my scenes and go home, because that's what I felt, obviously more comfortable doing and more confident in.
4 hours.
Yeah, it was so long. I had to pee the whole time. And then, finally, at the end, I said, "Is it appropriate to?" He said, "Yes, it is appropriate." So I don't really remember much of the meeting, although I wish I did, because it was a special for me. But we talked about the character, and that was interesting because I wanted to kind of hear what he thought about it, because I had a lot of thoughts about it, and I was happy to hear, and frankly a little surprised to hear that he was also interested in kind of creating a character that was authentically unemotional explicitly. That's what he kind of opened with, that he wanted the character to be unusually emotional, that you kind of wouldn't see all of his emotions explicitly at all times. It's not to say he wasn't feeling those things, but that just wouldn't be the first thing you notice about him. I thought that was so interesting. I got that from the script. I had done a little bit of it in my audition, I guess, and was really interested in kind of exploring that over the course of the shooting.
So is it all there in the script for you guys? I mean, it feels like such a Sorkin script. I mean, it feels like you could feel Fincher directing, and you can feel Sorkin writing, and you almost feel like you can see and taste the difference between the two.
Yeah. I think we couldn't have been in better hands, from what was on the page to how the director was steering us and the entire ship and telling the story. What I was so surprised by with David was how economical he was with his notes, and with getting through the scene as simply and as efficiently and as everything came out of his understanding of what that little piece of the puzzle meant for the whole picture. And I didn't think. I mean, I was so surprised that he put the story the story was the most paramount thing of the whole thing, and he just wanted it to be as cohesive and he just really cared about the story and how.
So you expected more Flights of Fancy from him?
I don't know. I just think, because I think his visual style is, of course, such a trademark and so defined, and I don't know. It's his stamp is so kind of prominent in his films. But I guess, of course, looking back on the catalogue of his movies, like it's the story. That's everything, every idea, every stylistic choice, every actor's note comes from serving his intention to serve the story and tell the story in the most exciting and meaningful way to him. So that was kind of wonderful.
But you didn't want to hear all that stuff. You wanted to just do your part.
Yeah, well, like Andrew said, we don't have like a, it's
interesting because you have such different. You seem to have such different approaches to it, as two actors.
Well, how so?
Just that Andrew seems very interested in all this, all the, what the details of what Fincher was thinking and all of that stuff, and you seem to be, you just want to get on the stage and do your...
No, I think Andrew's saying the same thing I would say, which is that we felt very safe on his set because we felt anything we could do would always be in service of the greater thing. He would never let us be indulgent. Well, we could be as indulgent as we want, perhaps, but it would always be in service of the right thing, which is the story, because we're only parts of the story, just as the music is a part and the wardrobe and the sets are a part of it, and one thing can't stand out or overwhelm other things. So, I felt, and I think what Andrew is just saying is I would agree with, which is that we felt like anything we could do would always be kind of guided in the right direction. If we could, I know I don't want to speak for you, but I assume it would be the same. We felt comfortable trying so many different things. Just as an example, my character is kind of emotionally disengaged and appears detached. Well, there's kind of a fine line where that becomes just odd for the sake of odd, or kind of or hard to kind of gauge what's going on inside of him, and that shouldn't be the case. As an audience, you want to know what's going on inside the characters, even if they might not know, or even if the other characters in the room don't know. And I always felt like I was able to kind of like push that envelope, knowing that it'll be in an environment that will ultimately make sense. So so the story as a whole will be a kind of a piece of the puzzle that fits in perfectly, rather than something that overwhelms another aspect of it. And it's because he's in charge in such a kind of a wonderful and thorough way.
And also, I can only say that now. At the time, I wasn't aware of it. I can only look at it in retrospect. I think, going off of what Jesse said, what was wonderful was that we could indulge. We could actually just do our jobs. We didn't have to worry about the bigger picture, because the person worrying about the bigger picture was far greater at worrying about the bigger picture than anyone else on set.
Right.
So I think what it did for all of us as actors was it enabled us to get lost. And I think what you were talking about earlier, like that thing about not having not knowing where a scene is going and not knowing where just being surprised every take, and then there's a block of takes in the middle of the 60 takes that are going to be just dead, and the fact that that's allowed, and the fact that we have time to do that, and the fact that there's not someone who has your contract behind the monitor going, we're going to rip it up, and you're going to be slaughtered with knives. Like the fact that we weren't scared about that, and that there was no judgment coming from the guy that was running the ship. I think that it was incredibly liberating and useful, and I think as young actors we were so thankful